Because budget, I worked on a few, is one of the biggest hoaxes.
Once you get into a middle income trap, to continue on that virtuous cycle of progress is very difficult. So your biggest curse is you're part of the Union of India. So agriculture is completely failed, although there is vast demand for it.
You can make the stock market dance by how much of money you ask the UTI, LIC to go and buy.
Your life as a young child in this country, aged 16 plus up to 22, 23, will be less prosperous than that of your parents. I don't think Indians want education. We are the biggest slum in the G20.
On behalf of the Guruswamy Center, I take great pleasure in inviting all of you to this evening's program. And unlike convention, we today had a very good start with some the speakers dawning and coming to the dais, and to start off really on time. This is our first program for 2025, and the topic for today is repairing the Indian economy. Perhaps the topic is one of the most important at this juncture. So we thought we'll start off the activities of Guruswamy Center with a very, very topical, interesting and important subject. The speaker this evening, Dr. Rathin Roy, has agreed, and very interestingly, this is the first time I'm meeting him. This is the first time I communicated with him, and everything in the last 3 weeks happened through WhatsApp, and he is here today. I am very delighted, very happy that he has agreed to speak today. Mohan Guruswamy, as all of you are aware, is also a well-known economist. He has been the force behind Guruswamy Center. In the last 6 years since Guruswamy Center began, the idea of promoting literary, cultural, art, serious discussion and raising public issues has been the main driver for this institute. However, COVID put a break, but in the last 1-2 years, slowly the momentum is picking up, thanks to all of you. And today, being a Tuesday, a working day, we are very happy that we have a house full. This is the first time perhaps an experiment was done to do it on a weekday. Given the transformation of Hyderabad into such a big city, commuting has become difficult. People said coming from Hyderabad to Secunderabad was tough, but I am sure the draw of the speaker, the activities that we are doing, and all the motivated audience, some of whom have been coming quite often to the events, has really kicked off for a wonderful evening today. A brief background for some of the new people who have come today. The activities we want to take up are mostly intended to provide divergent views. We want this platform to be host to divergent views, issues of public importance. Then from city to national to international, we want people to think, debate, discuss and take forward a healthy atmosphere of discussion in this city and outside. In the last 1 year, we had subjects from politics, economics, Hyderabad, and finally we had a remembrance of Shyam Benegal, boy from Alwal, as they say, where rich tributes were paid to Shyam Benegal by people very close to him, like Shankar Melkote, Sheikh then B. Narsingh Rao, Ilahi Hiptullah, and Muhammad Ali Beg. In between, we had political discussions before the general elections of 2024, where we had representatives from all the parties discussing, debating without shouting or yelling. So that was something very interesting. Then we had, a few programs on global issues like India-China border dispute, where real experts dwelled on the past to the future. Then we had a discussion on India, its emerging role in the world order, United Nations Security Council, reforms to multinational agencies, where we had two ambassadors, Syed Akbaruddin and Bala Venkatesh Verma, who retired as the ambassador to Russia. We also had a book release on Beyond Biryani, transformation of Hyderabad from the Nizams to a globalized city. Interestingly, it was written by a Hyderabadi staying in Delhi. And one of the other controversial subject we dwelt was on Hyderabad integration or liberation in September. So from controversy to history to politics to economics, which was the discussion on Nobel Prize 2024 economics, why nations fail. So we had a diverse subjects, speakers from different backgrounds, and one of the things which we also consciously did was to invite speakers mostly from Hyderabad. Hyderabad is such a huge city now, a lot of talent pool. We thought we will have a lot of speakers from Hyderabad, but occasionally get speakers from outside who will add a lot of value to our discussions. And we thought Dr. Rathin Roy, coming from Delhi, would be one of those. But interestingly, I found Rathin Roy has some interesting Hyderabad connections. He was born in Hyderabad, he told me, Secunderabad, and and incidentally not too far from here. It's walking distance. Walking distance. So I think he is the closest to our center. He was born in Shenoy Nursing Home. But then I asked him, I don't know whether I am revealing some information, but when I asked him, do you speak Telugu? So he said, Koncham, Koncham. And very frankly, I really did not prepare to, present him a lot, as Mohan will do some of it. But in my Facebook and LinkedIn post, some people gave me some interesting things about him. So he is now with the Kautilya School of Public Policy as a distinguished visiting faculty. He is also a member of the Economic Committee, Economic Council to Prime Minister. Made him popular or well known when he quit to most audiences beyond economics. So, before I, call him to speak, I request Mohan Guruswamy to set the tone for today evening's topic. And very briefly, Rathin Roy has, been widely traveling, lecturing. His articles are very, very incisive. And some of my friends who read say he leaves no punches. He holds no punches, as they say. So today evening, I am sure we'll have a very good session. The format will be Mohan will, introduce the topic, set the tone, and then Rathin Roy will speak for 45 minutes, followed by a Q&A in the end. Thank you very much. We'll start.
You are so close to each other. I was born here, and you were born 200 meters away. So we also worked in the same building for a while in the finance ministry, but at different times. He was the director of the National Institute of Public Finance, which is the think tank in the finance ministry. And I was in the finance ministry at that time. And I didn't realize that that institute, which does such pretty good work, was actually in the finance ministry, because nobody in the finance ministry seems to have any use for good work. So when I was asked to do a calculation of the total costs of the public sector in India, I asked the CEA's office to do it for me. They said, we can't do it. So somebody located this institution and said, let's give it to them. So this is typical government, pass the buck, pass the buck on. And then there was one Dr. Nandi there, Lahiri, who put it all together, and it's an astounding figure. If you take the opportunity cost and the money expended. So we did a great study. We went to the Prime Minister, presented it to him, and he said, I got up in a good mood today, and aap aake sab kharab kar diye. So have some samosas, and he said there's some sandesh which has come from Calcutta, have that, and keep this aside for a while, because there's too much of a hornet's nest here. So that's how I came across this institution first. And I keep following it for a bit here and there. And Rathin and I met very briefly in a studio, in a TV studio. I think we were on the same panel, or we were talking at cross purposes, or on the same side, I don't know what. But I said we must keep in touch with him. So when the topic of budget came up, budget is another 4 days from now, Somsekar and Feroz suggested a discussion on the budget. And I said, no budget. Because we will not discuss one thing in this center is the budget. Because budget, I worked on a few, is one of the biggest hoaxes which goes on in this country. Because about 96 to 98% of the budget is set by your previous commitments, your policies, your expenditures allocated, everything is set. And you can't jump around changing things. But this big hoax takes place because in the days of the license Raj, what was licensed, what was delicensed, customs duty of what would go up, what would come down, was of great interest. And the lobbies would work to do that. There was a time when Dhirubhai Ambani and Nasli Wadia would fight to change the duty structures of DMT and PTA so that their companies can become more profitable or less profitable. And the interest in the budget was who wins. So who wins actually was determined by who pays how much, to whom. And so then the bosses would fight among themselves, the lobbyists. So this is the democratic process at work. Anyway, so worked on, so this is a big hoax. Tomorrow is a big media event. Most of us have made a lot of money to comment on TV because TV now is becoming competitive and their fees have all increased. What started with a sitting fee of 300 rupees now goes into lakhs. So sit there and appear intelligent. But it's a hoax because nothing changes. Everything is there, set, cast in stone, And the Manmohan Singh's budget is remembered not because he did anything with the finances, but because he announced the scrapping of the industrial licensing policy. Nothing to do with the finance ministry. The Prime Minister wanted it. He said, put it in your speech. And it was put in a speech much against Dr. Singh's own instincts, because 2 months before that, he had written the South-South report, which ranted and raved against globalization and liberalization and what was happening in the world of high finance. And suddenly he was playing that very same game, which was fine, which helped India a lot, but it had nothing to do with the budget. After that, we have not had a big cataclysmic budget because there's nothing else the government can do of that nature. They could do many things because there's much which is wrong with the economy now. We are in a deep hole, in a mess, which I don't know how many people outside realize. Because, for people like us, people who are in this room, we are insured against inflation, we are insured against economic failure, we are insured against adverse jobless conditions, lack of economic growth. So we think that the budget is meant for us tomorrow. We are going to look at it in terms of benefits. But the budget will not change anything. So I wanted Rathin to basically talk about repairing India, because India is broken. If the country has to remain intact, because when countries come to the stage when there's so much of income inequality, there's so much of hopelessness, joblessness, when there's so much of divisions within the country, then you're heading towards an event which you may not be able to forecast when it will happen. But you're heading towards that. Great empires have collapsed. In 1620, the Mughal Empire was the biggest economy in the world. Almost accounted for 32% of the world's GDP. And it just went. In 40 years from that, Aurangzeb went, Shivaji went, Shivaji's Maratha Empire went in 60 years. The British, in 90 years, took this country, extracted the wealth from this country, extracted $45 trillion out of this country to finance their industrial revolution, took full control and changed this country completely. Events happen very fast. So I wanted him to talk about how do we prevent this cataclysmic event which is coming in this country, how to repair the country. So therefore the topic picked was, today's Deccan Chronicle of course said, Rathin Roy will be speaking, but missed the topic. So I'm glad they missed the topic, because then we won't have been able to take people in the hall today. As it is, we have a bigger than usual crowd. And when I joined the finance ministry, we all had terminals on our tables. So, and I looked, one was from Bloomberg, one was from Reuters, one was from the stockbrokers. And so I said, why are these things here? This is stock market, very important. The stock market is not important at all. Because when the stock market was doing very well, the economy was tanking. And when the economy is tanking, the stock market is doing well. So it's nothing to do with it. It is how much of money. And you realize in the finance ministry, we realize that you can make the stock market dance by how much of money you ask the UTI, LIC to go and buy next day. So every time a big industrialist would come by, so the RAC's phone, which is on our tables, would ring. And as the semi-political figure on the finance ministry has to be told, can you do something about so-and-so company, which means that ask LIC to buy some, because the share is drooping a bit. I said, please remove this terminal from here. And the finance minister said, what should I be looking at? I said, you should be looking at ratios. Savings to GDP ratio, investment to GDP ratio, inflation to capital investment to GDP ratio. All these ratios, these are the things you should be looking for. And instead of doing this budget, you should be doing an annual report. Think what happened last year. In 70 years, have we got an annual report? We know what was there in the budget last year, but nothing's, because typically in the finance ministry what happens is you make projections. After the first quarter, you realize that those things are not going to happen. Mr. Nainan and company have been pacified and kept going, and those things are not going to happen. So you send a message to all the ministries, cut expenditure. So who gets hit? Education, health, because these are the people who are voiceless people. You don't have streptopenicillin available in hospitals, a poor guy is not going to shout. He's going to die. Children don't go to school. It's okay. Then teachers don't go to school anyway. So everything gets cut. So we balance the books in the end, and then we have a little deficit in it. So this complete process is messed up because the money which comes into the government doesn't come as we plan. We give a beautiful cash flow. Cash flow never happens. And so Rathin will hopefully one day be able to sit in a position where he'll fix this economy, which we couldn't do, and we couldn't set right the system. So Rathin, welcome to Guruswamy Center. Nice to have you here.
Thank you, Dr. Guruswamy. I must use my time more productively now that I spend so much time in Hyderabad and come and talk to you more. Because many of the things you said, I don't know whether it's today or you're older than me. When I say similar things, people say you're very bold. I don't know what's so bold about saying that many of the things he said. So I don't really know where to begin. Repair the economy. Many of you here have heard me before. So perhaps what I'll do is I'll tell you the story of, quickly, I have 45 minutes, I'll tell you the story of why we are where we are, in my view, which is different from most people's view. Why it cannot be fixed, because this is Hyderabad and South India and you don't have any humanities education here anymore, all STEM. Why it cannot be fixed through a technical fix. When I was on the board of the IAS Academy in Missouri, I used to teach there. I discovered that I interacted in the early batches, it's about 99 batch to about 2011 batch. Discovered that about 74% of them were engineers. So the few non-engineers I met, they would call these engineers circuits. So I said, why do you call them circuits? They said, no, because whenever they see a public policy problem, they're looking what circuit is broken, like the electrician who came to my house today. And let's fix that circuit. That is what I call the technocratic solution to almost everything mentality, which is very easy to do because it's like opium. If everything was to be able to be fixed technocratically, then you wouldn't have to worry about politics or society. So the second thing I want to tell you, what I want to explore is why we are in this mess that cannot be fixed purely technocratically. And then I will tell you what I think the solution is. But because I'm a technocrat, my solution sounds simple and appealing to technocrats, and I might ruffle a few feathers on at least one topic, given the preponderance of the military in this city. But the solutions to many of the things I'm proposing actually lie in fixing non-technocratic stuff, and I'm not at all sure how that can be fixed. I'm not an expert on society or sociology. So here goes. Let me start by talking about myself growing up in India in the late 80s, when I was in my early 20s. So in my early 20s, in my opinion, in retrospect, many of you are my age or older, you'll remember, I hope you'll agree. I mean, forget all this, it was very peaceful and the environment was good. It was a very boring country, okay? Nothing happened here. Nothing happened here. I mean, you got up in the morning, you went to school, you went to college, you came back, you ate the same food. And you had basically 3 or 4 outs in life. The best out was to get the hell out of this country because it was a dirty game. The second out was you get into a gated community called the Indian Armed Forces. All right, the gated community, it doesn't matter, you go there. Third out was you join the people who ran the country and took reins from it, and that is called the Government of India. And so there were 3 basic outs if you were a good boy and you had done well. And there were some other scammy outs where you could make a serious money and do well. I should have done that. I didn't know I was not a good boy till then. Like become a lawyer or something. That was solid money, solid political power, real estate, that kind of thing. But those are like, high risk, high reward occupations. I was a good middle class boy, didn't have the guts. So, I took the first out. Barjao. I can come back and pontificate, but first go out, make some money, then come back. Okay. All this profoundly changes with Dr. Manmohan Singh's advent. I don't know where, Hyderabad. Okay, P.V. Narasimha Rao's advent. Okay, let's not get into that. Somebody who I don't know was responsible for changing the direction of the Indian economy. Okay, PVNR, chalo. And that direction change which happened actually when I was abroad, and I made a big mistake going when I did. I didn't know this was going to happen. Led to a profound change in the lives of many people like us in this room. And I can say this with certainty, yes, that all of us belong to the top 10% at least of the Indian population by prosperity, income and wealth. At least 10%, top 10%. Okay? Our lives changed dramatically for the better all through from 1991 till very recently. Our lives, and for those who produced children in 1994, those children's lives too. Up to about, I'd say, 2008, kids born up to 2006, 2008, their lives were better. This was, of course, in line with the record of Indian prosperity, mark my words, Indian prosperity since independence, because since independence, unless you were unfortunate enough to live in Bihar or something, it was quite likely, highly likely, that your life would be more prosperous than that of your parents. And your children's lives would be more prosperous than yours. Right? For the first time, coming today, I keep telling my students this, I feel very bad for them, very bad for them. For the first time in my adult life and in the contemporary history of India, I cannot say this. I can go into this in the discussion, but there's a 70 to 80% probability, even if you're born in the top 10% of the population, that your life as a young child in this country, aged 16 plus up to 22, 23, will be less prosperous than that of your parents if you do not have virasat, which is the Hindi word for legacy wealth. I'm sure most of your children do, thanks to you. So they're very lucky, they're very blessed. But if you have a house in Jubilee Hills, your child is okay. But for all the people whose children don't have a house in Jubilee Hills, or in Picket at least, they're going to have a worse life than their parents. So that's going to be. So how did we come to this cycle, this story of my life and the story of my country from 1991 to now? Let's focus on the nice things that happened to my contemporaries since 1991. I'll tell you in a very simple way. So in 1988, I got my first job. A lecturer in a college in a central government university called Delhi University. That job is the equivalent of a sub-divisional magistrate class 1 UPSC. Whatever, there's a whole bunch of class 1 jobs, So the SDM then settles, the IAS goes up. But when you're 22 and you get that job, you get, it's sort of entry-level class 1 government job. Lieutenant in the army, sub-lieutenant in the navy, SDM. That was 3,000 rupees a month. Just had a pay commission. Now, 3,000 rupees a month, if I wanted to buy a car, it would have cost me 3.5 years' salary. Okay? This is important. It's not difficult to understand. If I wanted to buy an AC, it would cost me 1 year's salary. 1 year's salary. One khatara, wo voltas, khatar AC. Okay? And if I wanted to buy an air ticket from Bombay to Delhi, it would cost me 2 months' salary. I remember that very well. I'm from Bombay. 7,000 rupees. That's what a ticket would cost. Return ticket. Indian Airlines, it was, I think, called. Yeah. They gave you earbuds, I remember. And there was no business class. Very quaint. Interesting life. So, that was me. Fast forward to the 6th pay commission. Forget the 7th. Or fast forward to today. Why don't we do that? So, today, somebody entering that same entry-level job earns 60,000 rupees a month at least. CTC. A Maruti car, the cheapest one, costs about 3.5 lakhs. That's 6 months' salary. From 3.5 years' salary to 6 months' salary. An AC you can buy in 20 days' salary. Entry-level government, same. Okay? Counter for counter. And an air ticket from Bombay to Delhi still costs 7,000 rupees on a good day. After 34 years. Just see how prices have moved to favor us. We had a massive movement in relative prices that actually fueled Indian economic growth story and prosperity, which was aided, of course, by liberalization, because some khachad public sector Indian Airlines type of airline would never have been able to handle this. So quite correctly, it expanded. Or MTNL, whatever it was called, I don't remember. Executive Engineer, North 2/1, all that is gone. You get this process. Yeah? You get multiple airlines, you get fast-moving consumer goods. right? 9 brands of shampoo, 15 brands of whiskey, all sorts of things that you and I consume come out. Nice little package, dal packets, no dirty packets anymore for us. And all these things, the relative prices and wages moved in such a way that that other opportunities began to open. If you worked in the areas where relative prices had moved in our favor, you got paid accordingly. And when you got paid accordingly, you demanded more of those things. And that led to a massive explosion in Indian prosperity between 1991 and about 2016, I'd say. Demon was a great watershed there, 2016. Roughly, we can quibble about the year, but at least 2016, not later than that. But that, what I call good times, Vijay Mallya times, was going to end someday. India is a big country. So when I say the top 10% of the Indian population benefited from this, in some measure, more at the top, less at the bottom, I am talking about 150 million people, you know. And that, as somebody once explained to me, is bigger than the entire market of Germany. So you don't really have to bother, I did my thesis on this, with the remaining kachra, 1.2, 1.3. Not immediately, you don't. Because you've got a big market there. You've got 150 million people, they're consuming, they're producing. And so what Dr. Guruswamy was saying was happening between Nasti Wadia and Ambani. The same thing was sort of replicated with us. You know, we began to look for tax breaks for, I remember this long spiel Chidambaram gave in 2007 about removing taxes on pan masala. And then somebody else said, no, you shouldn't have done that. You should have removed taxes on, I think it was sanitary napkins. That has come back into the news now. And so on and so forth. So basically, as he was rightly describing, you know, this process was going on independently of the Ministry of Finance or the Government of India, etc. They were facilitating it. Doesn't matter Congress, BJP. They were facilitating it because it was the growth story. But it was the growth story of us. Not everybody. Cut to South India. South India benefited unusually, hugely from this growth story. Because the supply of stuff, other than lobby stuff, corporate stuff, and performance, Nautanki, Mujra, by which there are two things I mean by that. The capital of one is Delhi and the other is Bombay. Though now Hyderabad is coming up. Nautanki Mujra happens where? It happens in the entertainment industry. That's Bollywood for you. And it happens in the media. That's Delhi for you. Okay. So other than Nautanki Mujra, a lot of good money to be made in Nautanki Mujra in my time also. Still is. But there's serious money to be made, especially in media, Nautanki Mujra, in the 1994 to 2010 period. That all happened in North India. So if you look at Noida, you look at that single prosperity center in North India, that was all sort of Nautanki Mujra. And lobbying. Lobbying is big money, serious money. Tens of thousands of crores change hands, rent seeking happens, land permissions are given, licenses, that all that game continued. But the business of satisfying the demands of the top 10%, the majority of that action happened in South India, incrementally. Gujarat and Maharashtra were there, they were always there, but Maharashtra moved increasingly to finance. Where did the IT revolution come? First Karnataka, then Hyderabad. Where did the pharmaceutical revolution come? We are rich people, we are top 10%, we like to go to AIG hospital, वो पद्मश्री भी मिलता है, healthcare, वो BJP आपका MP है ना या वो healthcare क्या है, Apollo hospital. You all be MP, right? Secunderabad, BJP? Huh? Oh, Chennai. No, not Virinchi. Who is your MP here, Secunderabad? Isn't he a BJP MP who owns Apollo? He does own Apollo. No, okay, I was told he owns Apollo, huh? Other constituency owns Apollo. Anyway, so you can see that this was a major pharma center. Okay, some Reddy. Okay, we can agree it's a Reddy. So that constituency was Hyderabad. So Hyderabad's wealth came from the public sector earlier, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and Charminar cigarettes, poor fellow, and Zinda Talisman, maybe I don't know. But then it became Apollo, Pharma, IT, and then Accenture, and then of course you had the Kerala effect from all my brethren who went to San Diego, made money and came back here and, invested in land. That was a separate story which has gone on and on and on with us. But the demands of you guys, whether it was me guys, whether it was cars Or airlines, look at Hyderabad airport, how they anticipated demand. It's outstripped Chennai. In 2 years, it's going to outstrip Bangalore. The fight is all, will Bangalore and Hyderabad be the biggest airports in 10 years? Nobody's talking about Bombay being the biggest airport or whatever they're building in Noida or something. All right. Certainly not Bhubaneswar. All the action is here to meet this demand. So South India prospered. I'm now speaking geographically, on the back of this 10% revolution. But this cannot go on indefinitely. Because when the music stops, see, I grew up in Bombay, so I use a Bollywood analogy. And the music, I think, I said in 2019, when I was at the PMEAC, they didn't like it. The music looks like it's going to stop. Now in 2024, I can say it has stopped. When the music stops, you end up like every other country in the world, barring 3 or 4. If you think of prosperity transformation of a country as a movie, this movie normally has a tragic ending. Anarkali mar jati. Okay. And let me start with all the tragic endings that have passed us before. Brazil, Argentina, Egypt, Turkey, Philippines, Thailand, all. What is a tragic country? Tragic country means your per capita income goes up to $12,000 to $14,000. We are only at 3,000 now. It goes up, sure. But whatever your per capita income is, whether it's 7,000, 8,000, 12,000, 10,000, you have the same problems in your country that you had when you were a very poor country. You have crime, you have destitution, you have stunting, right? You have various forms of vulnerability to poverty. You have crappy education, you have bad health for a significant majority of your population. And a significant minority of population, what I call the gated minority, the number differs by country, lives a good life. They grumble all the time about the taxes they have to pay to help the rest of them survive in imperfect lives, but they live a good life. In Brazil, the standard way the rich commute, I lived in Brazil for 3 years, in Sao Paulo, is by helicopter. It's going to happen in Bangalore any day now. Somebody's talking already air taxi. When I heard that, I said, we are coming to the sad ending of this movie. That is called what I call and many others call the middle income trap. Where you end up in a place from which also there is no escape. It's a bit like being in Patal Bhairavi. There is no escape from it. Because once you get into a middle income trap, to continue on that virtuous cycle of progress is very difficult. Because structurally, then to make those changes is very difficult, and therefore it is best to avoid getting into such a trap, and we are almost there. So from the point of view of the economy, that has to be repaired. For it to be repaired, I need to worry about, everyone with me so far? You get my fundamental point that our entire prosperity in my lifetime and yours has been one which has involved only our prosperity, top 10%, whether you live in Bihar or UP or South India. That engine of economic prosperity fueling India's progress is now dead. We need to find another engine. Corollary 2, that 150 million prosperity boom led to the kind of fantastic growth in a part of the country, which is South India, peninsular India, but especially South India, that you have seen since 1991. I was born in Hyderabad. It was a beautiful city. It is now an ugly but very prosperous city. Right? This was easily the most beautiful city in the world. Actually, it is in India. It is still the most beautiful city in India, except like all of South India, it has become ugly. So, I'll take Hyderabad and India over Bangalore or something. But that prosperity that the South got has led to its own set of problems for the South, which I want to unpack. Since I said I'll take South India in parallel. So first, let's see what we need to do to solve this broken problem for India, that is Bharat. And then we'll talk about South India, because South India has a problem staring at it in the face. And Mohan, you alluded to it. And I'm going to go there, because somebody needs to go there. We have been producing for the top 10%. Obviously, the solution is to expand that prosperity, and every one of those few successful countries in the world, from France to England to South Korea to China, has done what I'm saying. Communists are silly people. You don't expand everyone's prosperity at once. I accept that. You start with the top 10, 15%, then you go to 30, then you go to 40, but you have to go. What the history teaches us is that by saying, oh, you can't redistribute poverty and you must have inequality and things economists like saying, you forget lesson 2 of history, which is most of the time, having got the prosperity of the top 10%, you are not able to expand it to the next 10, next 20, next 30. Note, I'm not using the word poverty. Thank you. The poor in this story are irrelevant. I feel sorry for them. Therefore, you must not have poor, and we are almost there. Our extreme poverty rates are less than 10%. China is less than 1%. Never mind. They'll always be better than us. They're like that smart kid in school. Sab kuch acha karta hai, chhod do. But at least we're less than 10%. That's pretty remarkable for a country which had 60% extreme poverty in 1950. But even if it was, the poor are not the problem, but they're not the solution either. Because the poor can't consume, they can't work, they're probably not educated, they're half-starved, they're on the verge of death and vulnerability all the time. What you can do is give them charity, give them subsidy. And try and minimize the number of poor every generation, and we have done a good job on that, I think. But what about the person who earns the minimum wage or twice the minimum wage or 3 times the minimum wage, wherever they live? What about them? Now here is where I'm again going to say I'm not a communist. I really believe in market-based prosperity. But for that, I also believe you must abolish Victorian charity from our mindset. And Victorian charity is integral to our mindset when we think not of the poor, they deserve that charity, but of people who earn the minimum wage or twice the minimum wage or 3 times the minimum wage. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that because if I earn the minimum wage, I used to have this argument with my UN colleagues all the time. They'd say, oh, we think we should have a universal public education system and a universal public health system. Where do your kids study? All the kids studied in private schools and went to private healthcare. Okay, so there's bullshit about a public system when your child is not there. So, what I want for that person earning 3 times the minimum wage is to have a more modest lifestyle, but a lifestyle that is moving towards mine. And that at the very minimum means that there are 5 things, just 5 things, that this person earning the minimum wage or 2 times the minimum wage or 3 times the minimum wage must be able to buy from the market with the money they earn from their own pocket. No subsidy. No subsidy. And an economic system that does not deliver that is a failed economic system, like India. What are these 5 things? Food, a square meal. When I was at an IPFP, I tried to calculate the cost of a square meal without subsidy. It's impossible. No wonder farmers commit suicide. It is impossible to calculate what the true cost of a square meal is. And this is important because I like farmers to be prosperous. And that's the other side of the equation. If you're going to have growth, you can't just say, oh, reduce people in agriculture. That's part of the story. But farmers must make money. They must make 15% return on investment. At least. That was behind the doubling farmers' income idea, by the way. Wo slogan ban gaya wo to. Now you're used to it. So, but how do you do that? You do that by giving the farmer a fair price for what they earn without subsidy. But the poor farmer can't decide what to grow, can't decide when they get water, can't decide when they get bijli, can't decide when it is sold. Some year the farmer makes some money by selling sugar or oil seeds. Government of India gets scared because we start yelling and shouting on TV and then immediately put an export ban or they'll increase imports and they'll screw up his prices. So agriculture is completely failed, although there is vast demand for it because of policy. The first step to fix that was already taken by our Honorable Prime Minister Shriman Narendra Modi. And the Honorable Prime Minister came out with a slogan, if you remember, called doubling farmers' income. Remember that? Don't ask me what happened ever in the lifetime of this government. But doubling farmers' income, the idea was that the farmer should be able to make enough money to sell food at non-subsidized prices. There's a whole blueprint for it sitting in Niti Aayog gathering dust. But we have failed at doing it. So first let's repair that. Let's fix agriculture and make it a profitable sector. If it's profitable, no doubt less people will work there and we have to find out where they'll work. The second example I give, and I'm embarrassed because my wife says I'll use this too much. Who has heard my shirts example here? 1, 2. Okay, I can do it. 3. Okay, chalo. 4, 5, 6. I'm getting to where I can't say it. Okay, only 7. This shirt. of mine is cost 3,000 rupees. Okay, it's made for Marks and Spencer. It's totally made in India. Atmanirbhar. I always buy Atmanirbhar. But the guy who's earning the minimum wage also wants to buy shirts, right? But they want to buy shirts. They want to buy shirts for 3,000 rupees. They'll buy shirts for 300 rupees. They're available in the market. Where do you think those are made? Vietnam and Bangladesh. 82% of those shirts are imported. So this country can make shirts for me, but can't make shirts for Vietnam for that 3 minimum wage, 2 minimum wage person. That whole import demand is gone, and been going for 20 years. Nobody cares. I can tell you why later in the question and answer. But that's the second sector I need to repair. Make shirts for people who earn the minimum wage in your country, without subsidy. No PLI, no subsidy. I said before, without subsidy. Why can't you make shirts? If Bangladesh can make shirts and send them to India and make a profit on it, why can't you? If there are reasons, tell me. That's where government comes in. That's where thinking comes in. We can fix it. But we must want to fix it. Third, housing. I don't understand all this Pradhan Mantri Awas and charity business. I can go into detail in the discussion on this. But housing, if I'm earning the minimum wage or twice the minimum wage, I want to build a house that costs 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs. Why can't I go to the bank and get EMI to build it? Why do I need Awas and charity and bribery and IAS and all that coming in? I just want to go to the bank like you. You buy a house, whatever, Oxford Heights or, Manikonda Hills or, whatever, Picket Dreams for 50 lakhs, 1 crore, 2 crores. What do? You take your family wealth half, then you go to the bank half, EMI, BMI, all that, right? They can't do that. No, somebody will tell me there is some NBFC, but please, the scale is not there. The scale at which we buy housing, taking EMIs in the market without subsidy, that scale is not available at the 5 lakh, 10 lakh, 15 lakh segment, which is what people earning once, twice, 3 times the minimum wage can afford. One house in their lifetime. The fourth is education. Education is a complex failure. I won't go into it. I don't think it's all about affordability. But I think we need to fix a problem. We need to convince people that they want to be educated. I don't think Indians want education. Take it up in the discussion. And that's a major failure. They want credentials, they want skills, they want jobs, they want many things. But education, as I understand the word, I don't think most Indians have a demand for. And then people don't want to die and want to live a reasonably healthy life. So they should be able to go and afford healthcare. Now, whether you provide it publicly or privately, that's a design question. But collectively, India should be able to provide affordable healthcare for everybody, whether it's the public or private sector, right? So these 5 things that people earning the minimum wage want to buy but cannot buy, if we can make sure that they are... Are you done? Are bhai? Phone off, Andy. Are you sure? Huh? Positive? Okay. If you can't buy these 5 things with the money you make, then something is seriously wrong with the economy. Now take a scenario where, it sounds very good, but there are issues here. These 5 things that people earning, this is about half the Indian population, not the whole, only half, earning the minimum wage, twice the minimum wage, 3 times the minimum wage, can actually buy from their own pockets without subsidy. Imagine that these constitute 60% of tomorrow's growth. 20% comes from people like us, 2025. All right? All this now, what we consume now. So what constitutes today the leading indicators of the Indian economy? Because food is not. 300 rupee shirts is not. It's all FMCG, air travel, indigo. Yes, this froth will be 20%. And 20%, this is a dream because, if I was sitting in an audience of economists or Dilliwalas, people say, what about exports? And I can only tell you exports, Mahatma Gandhi once said when he was asked about Western civilization, what do you think of Western civilization? He said it would be a very good idea. So what do you think of India as an export powerhouse? I think it would be a very good idea. मेरी जिंदगी में ना हुआ है ना. The only time we tried to export, we did something so pathetic. So when you export something, when ask the Chinese, they export. The Chinese export because what they export, they can sell to their population also at competitive prices. You can't beat China in what they're exporting in their own home market. Right? So if you produce properly for your home market, you'll export automatically. Instead of that, again, this is Indian mentality. We decided, oh, let's create a small enclave. In that enclave, let's put land and capital. Let's suspend human rights. Let's suspend labor laws. Let's call them SEZs. Pura fail, 100%. Remember SEZs? Show me one successful SEZ. Now, 20 years I've seen that farcical nonsense going on. Show me one SEZ that works. I mean, there are a lot of scams going on. There's one going on in this city. Just go to Gachibowli. But one that actually functions and produces output for exports at volume. One SEZ. People don't like talking about all this. Then they look here and there. But all people would give me all this gas 20 years ago. Oh, SEZ will transform Indian exports. Nothing will transform your exports if you don't improve productivity. And improving productivity means working at scale. And working at scale is not what we do because we only produce for 10% of our population. Okay? So, and we produce IT. I don't want to talk about IT today. The papers are enough proof to us that hamari auqat kya hai IT mein. Good proof you've got with AI coming in and all that. Okay? India is at the low end of the IT system. Was at the low end of the IT system, and if you don't change it, I'm not an expert, will be at the low end. It would be again a good idea if we could produce, what is it called? Deep fake. Something like that. What we produce, according to Surjit Bhalla, is a deep state. But we could possibly produce a deep fake IT system. So these 5 things, if the structure of economy changed, then you would get a pathway to prosperity which would avoid the middle income trap. Now I've done my job as a macroeconomist. Only one question remains to be asked as a macroeconomist. What will happen to jobs? Jobs are not created except by Sarkari Babus. UPSC creates jobs. It's the only job creating machine in this country. Alright? Activities create jobs. And the 5 things I've outlined are not going to be affected by AI, capital intensity, nothing. They are all jobful. Agriculture is jobful. Producing shirts at scale, 300 rupee shirts is jobful. Textiles are very labor intensive. Construction and the housing industry is jobful. Education is jobful. Health is jobful. Your employment problem is not a standalone problem to be solved. It's a consequence of the structure of the economy and what you produce. If you can alter that structure to produce the things that people want to consume, you have solved the problem of jobs. So jobs is solved if we change the economic structure. Here I should say goodbye and end my lecture, but I'm not going to because I'm not a technocrat. If I was a technocrat, I'd stop here. Circuit mein band kar di. But I'm not a technocrat. So there are problems in doing all this. Let me start with our own region, South India. Telling somebody in Tamil Nadu, somebody quite senior, said your biggest curse is you're part of the Union of India. Why am I saying that? As an economist, you love your flag, okay. But as an economist, see, for an economy like Tamil Nadu or Kerala, Telangana almost, Telangana is a little more complicated, but which has a per capita income which is close to the next poorest country in the G20, which is Indonesia. Remember, I used to say this when I used to work and I used to go abroad and our embassies would get very hassled with me. I'd say India is an important country in the G20 like Dharavi is an important part of Bombay. We are the biggest slum in the G20. Okay, we are not rich. We are really poor, but there are lots of poor people. Lots. So we have to be in the G20. Chalo. So we are in the G20. So second poorest, second slum is Indonesia. And Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka are now fairly close to that slum's income. $3,000, $3,500 per capita. Okay. But so at that stage, Tamilian household should not be having cooks, drivers and maids. You should be capital intensive in your home. You should be producing transport that looks very different from transport in Khachar parts of India. Like UP or something. You should be able to commute from 200 kilometers away from Chennai into Chennai to be part of, or at least here Perumbudur, to be part of a larger workforce. Right? You're also a high manufacturing state. None of these conditions obtain in Tamil Nadu, and that is because they have constant access to cheap labor from the north, including the manufacturing sector in Tamil Nadu. Okay? So South India is suffering. Now how does South India is not suffering. South India is becoming part of that same middle income trap, except they can't see it. How do you solve this problem? I'll give you one example. You could solve, and I'll give you examples on all five I've said. I can only give you thoughts on education, but I can certainly talk about construction. I'm going to pick up textiles. So when I saw this 300 rupee thing happening, I went and asked people. I asked people in Tirupur, whether we have two big textile hubs at Tirupur and Vapi, South Gujarat. So you can make these 3,000 rupee shirts. Man, why can't you make 300 rupees? Raise your game, do volume, make some money. I'm from Bombay. You must make money. You must have a desire to make money, not to buy Audis and BMWs and drive them on bad roads. And buy gold or whatever people do with their money. Paise banao. Be like Ambani. So they said wage rates are too high. I said, yeah, sure, wage rates are too high. I'm not asking you to set up this plant in Tirupur. Go to Bihar, go to UP, set them up there, Jharkhand, Bengal. No, they don't have the skill. I said, you're talking nonsense. Your whole shop floor is full of people from Jharkhand and UP and Bihar. I'm not saying you go. How will you live there? You're from Tirupur. You can't go and live in Begusarai or something. You'll go mad. So send this fellow, fund him, do what we all do. Create entrepreneurs. Tamilians were polite. The Gujaratis are rude people. The answer I got, actually indirectly, so I must say a second remove, is, I'll say it in Hindi and translate it, unka swabhav theek nahi hai. They have bad nature. Now, then I said, but if they have bad nature, why do you let them come and work in Surat and in Tirupur? Throw them out, employ Tamilians at 5 times the wage. So no, here we can control them. Because they don't bring their families, right? And I learned this in COVID. It's not as simple as that. Control, I'm caricaturizing. Because suddenly in COVID, they became migrant labor. All of them became same country. Mera Bharat Mohan, all these people give gas. Mera Bharat Mohan has migrant labor in the same country. Which means that there's a complete disjunct between the peninsula, which is prosperous, and the north, which is not prosperous, and be very afraid of this. The per capita income of UP, which is the second poorest state, I don't even want to talk about Bihar, is $900 per capita. It is poorer than Nepal. It is poorer than Nepal. And the per capita income of Tamil Nadu, as I told you, is equivalent to Indonesia. That's the gap. In the history of the world, there have been only 3 countries I have found since World War II, which have had a similar situation, where the political power and the majority of people live in the poorer parts. And the richer people and the minority, population-wise, live in the richer parts. What I call the Great Indian Plain and the Peninsula. So if you think of most countries, look at America. All the rich people live on the coast. The ones who don't like Trump or didn't until recently. Alright, they live on the coast. And all the useless people live in the Rust Belt, South Dakota. Nobody lives there. So the majority of the population lives in prosperous areas, the minority in less prosperous. Europe, same thing. The action is all in UK, where it used to be in the UK. France, Germany, Italy, they are G7. And all these sort of less prosperous, all this Greece and Portugal and Ireland, lower populations live there. Again, majority population. I could go on, Japan, any country you look at. So then it's simple. Then you just transfer money from the rich to the poor and you come up with a political settlement. The 3 countries where this is not true are the former Soviet Union, the former Yugoslavia, which is why I took your point very seriously, and the present Republic of India. So be very afraid about how this can continue. And you can see already in the papers, South Indian states are saying, why are we subsidizing the North? Well, you have to ask yourself, why are you importing labor and capital from the North? Ask yourself, why did UP deindustrialize? There are many interesting questions to ask. It's not a one-sided picture. Unless you want to caricature and say North Indians are lazy, they're backward, then we got to fix it as a country. So I'm out of my comfort zone here. I'm just a technocrat, right? But I'm also open my eyes. I can see this is going on. There's this tension coming up. So it's not going to be that easy to, otherwise you're a technocrat, very simple. Go to the low wage areas, make 300 rupee shirts, problem solved. I'm just giving an example of the complexity. It's not that easy to solve this problem. It's not that easy to make people come here as migrants. There's a caste system involved. I have some theories. I won't go into them. Let me just tell you that my father's family, moved to Bombay from what is now Bangladesh 110 years ago. Okay. And we were accepted as Maharashtrians. I'm 3rd generation now. Marathi is my first language. There was no problem in our immigration. I'll tell you why, because we were Brahmins. There's interoperability between Brahmins. There's no interoperability between Yadavs. Your social modes, your caste system, all this will come and bite you. There's no point pretending they don't exist and doing economics. Because I've seen there are others here. I saw that festival, Big Bull came out and all that recently. They have no interoperability, Bull. I'm saying yeah, nothing. But I have with Aingars, I have with Kanikup's Brahmins, because we have Gotra, we know where Shraddh is done. There are fixed points which Modi likes, where these things are done, right? So Baniyas have interoperability, so they migrate well. The rest of the country doesn't, and that's about 80%. Just to give you a second exemplary flavor of the larger challenge that affects us. I see I have exactly 6 minutes, which is great. There are other institutional challenges which I will just touch upon, which are signals that we are basically, one is social and has to do with us. So there are many responses possible for this. One possible response for this, it's not our fault entirely, because we are passive creatures, we go with the flow. No? We don't have a nice life, watch TV, stare at my wife, that kind of thing. But educated, civilized people earning a lot of money, as he said, insulated. I just want to touch on that point. That insulation is a choice, but it is also a phenomenon about which there must be consciousness. And there is no consciousness in India whatsoever amongst people like us about this insulation. See, when I was a child, we used to take something called a train. Well, you will all know. I normally address much younger audiences. There's a thing called a train. And that train used to be clean. And you could actually sit in it. And you couldn't still use the toilet. But everything else worked. You got reasonable food. You went. And the train was about fraternity. Even the common thing we used to say when we took these long journeys is you didn't feel like getting off the train. When you went from Delhi to Madras or something. Even you traveled in second class, first class, those were different classes. But the point was, you still had to go to the station. You still had to go to the platform. So you met people who were not like you and you shared some experience with them. I don't know what Kachiguda station looks like also. I'm sure it's horrible. I'm sure it's much better than earlier. But I know what Hyderabad airport looks like. And I'm very proud of it. What an airport we have built. What is that word people like to use about Vande Bharat? First world feeling. So we are so satisfied with that first world feeling that we don't want to expand prosperity and be truly first world. So we have a serious intra-elite problem of getting out of our comfort zone and not realizing that we actually live pretty terrible lives. When I was once in Sierra Leone, doing some consultancy there, I told the elites there, I said, I told the Prime Minister, I think we should take them to Kuala Lumpur. Because these elites in Sierra Leone, they have the same facilities like we do, elites in Kuala Lumpur. But look at the roads they drive on. Look at the dirty traffic they have. Look at the pollution. Many of you, I'm sure, have SUVs. Well, what kind of life are you leading in Hyderabad, driving an SUV on some khadka road with bad traffic, noise, pollution, scooters going the wrong way? Much better if you had an SUV in Kuala Lumpur, no? Much better. You have a better life for the same money. So that we have now begun to do what all middle-income trap economies do, which is be very content with the fact that we are rich people in a poor and failed country. So that is one sociological problem we will have to solve. The second, I'd be very interested in your comments on this, Dr. Guruswamy. It came to me that, in a very strange way after coming to Hyderabad, that the Indian state is actually shockingly weak. But we look at the state to be the major agent of change in this country, but the state is so weak. And I'll give you an example. So Kerala is a high per capita income state. Andhra Pradesh is Hyderabad is an emerging metropolis, right? And I hear big words about it. My friend KTR is very voluble about, how first world feeling Hyderabad is. Okay. So when we go out of this road, I'll take $100, 1 lakh bet with you. We will go out on the main road here and you give me 10 minutes and somebody will drive ulta on a scooter. Okay. So I'll take the same bet in Cochin, I'll take the same bet in Chennai. And second, I'll take a 5 lakh bet that within 3 minutes, there'll be a chap without a helmet. Now a state that can't even manage two-wheeler traffic, you want them to do big things. See, because Kerala, Telangana, high human development, high income, same behavior as Bihar. So you can't just say, if the income goes up, problem will be solved. The education improves, problem. It will not be solved. It has not been solved. And this is very, very, very important. Taking off my technocratic hat, I realize that these are the binding constraints. You see, because until and unless I am able to find alternatives which are social in nature to the government doing things and asking the government to do things, that unless we are able to take collective social action and change many of these things, you are not going to have a transformation in this country. So I've given you three very different examples of one is, so it's not as simplistic as inequality. The South and the North are unequal, but the implications of inequality are not all good for the South. Please disabuse yourself of that notion if you ever had it. Your lives here are terrible because of that inequality. Okay? And in this context, therefore, it is not surprising to me that the neat solution I gave you is failing. And it's not a conspiracy theory like some people, these are processes, these are gigantic processes that happen in countries. It's not that, Mr. Adani has sat in Ahmedabad and dreamt this up, that only the top 150 million will progress. This has happened since Manmohan Singh, it happened through Vajpayee, it happened through Narasimha Rao. Till about 2005, 2006, we had a chance to change it. But we never took the steps we needed to change it. But luckily, these things are still correctable. Many of these things are correctable. But the point I'm trying to make to you is that they're not correctable purely through technocratic action. And I say this to you because I'm a technocrat and because so many engineers infest the public policy space. Very often everyone is looking for the circuit that is broken. And they say, let's fix that circuit. Government policy making also does that. You will not believe how empty and bereft and devoid of ideas governments are, including state governments. They have no ideas. Otherwise, you would not see Boston Consulting running most education ministries in this country. You would not see somebody getting impressed by randomized control trial. All I have to do is go and feed some technocratic bump and people get impressed. And that is not going to solve our problem. So to conclude, we had a path of development from 1991. Well, let me start to conclude from the end. I said at the beginning that the most depressing marker of failure of this society, this economy for me as an Indian, is that the children I teach today will, 80% of them, unless they have inherited wealth, will be less prosperous than their parents. I cannot think of a more horrific marker of failure than that, to fail your own children of your country. Second thing I said, this happened because our development path has been based on our prosperity. That engine is over. The third thing I said is, there's a way to fix this. And I've given you a technocratic solution. The fourth thing I said with examples, because that's a profound topic, is that solution implemented technocratically will not be enough. And looking at the state to implement a transformation will not be enough. We will need considerable societal change. We will need to do some very close self-examination of how we as the elite approach the problem of prosperity combined and try therefore to change the way we address questions of prosperity. Let me conclude with a brief statement from our Constitution. If you've all read the preamble of the Constitution, I'm sure. But, it says liberty, equality, fraternity. The Constitution says that the state shall secure liberty and equality, but it shall work to promote fraternity. And Ambedkar has a beautiful essay on this, which I would commend it to all of you. Ambedkar understood, and the constitution makers understood, fraternity cannot be brought up by the state. No government servant, no politician can foster fraternity in a society. It has to come from within us. And the divisions I'm talking about, the inequalities I'm talking about, are a function of a low fraternity society. You can blame the caste system, I'm not good enough, I don't know why it's happening. You can say Abdul ko tight karo. You can say caste system is bad. You can say many things. But the multidimensional lack of fraternity in all its respects is, I think, at the root of many of the social problems today. So to summarize the third point, on which I'm not a domain expert, so I've been going into because it's necessary for me to do it, if I'm to be honest with you, is we have to increase the level of fraternity in our society. And until that happens, we are not going to see a happy ending to this movie. लेकिन पिक्चर अभी बाकी है. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rathin Roy. You have definitely not disappointed us this evening. You have really thrown light on the repairable issues with good examples. some of us, really understood the nitty-gritties of what we are going through in the last 30-40 years. I'm just reminded of now, हम लोग अमृत काल में आ गए. We are passing through Amrit Kal and we are on vision of attaining Viksit Bharat. So the repairable points perhaps I think we need to look at, and the growth at 6% average or something, it's far below the expected. I am reminded of after 91, 96 we had Vision 2020 by Abdul Kalam. We wanted India to become a developed nation from a developing. But where we are after 2020, I think we have forgotten that slogan. We have now gone to 2057. So I think we have a long way ahead. We will have a Q&A session now with Mohan summarizing, and we will take questions from all of you.
In 1991, when Dr. Singh announced the scrapping of the industrial licensing policy and the dismantling of Udyog Bhavan, we had 27 million people in the organized sector. The organized sector is government, people with factory jobs, protected by trade unionism. So this is the organized sector, 27. In 2025 is 31 million. So he's talking about 150 million people. You multiply into 5, you got 150 million people. So you got, that is your Viksit Bharat. The rest is there. You've got a multi-layered country. You've got a country which has got the per capita standards of living, relative standards of a Europe on top, and followed by lots of, and then Africa at the bottom, with plenty of cheap labor, plenty of consumption of shoddy goods, all that takes place. So unless the organized sector expands, but what we have been doing, the organized sector has been getting more money to it by militant organization. Now, the government salaries today in this country accounts for 13.5% of GDP. Salaries and pensions. Government of India, the entire dhacha, including 1.1 military, civil servants, state governments, employs 23 million people. Now, this is your high income, high salaried enclave, where a school teacher in a government school gets 70,000 rupees, whereas the same school teacher in a private school will get 6,000 rupees or 7,000 rupees. A chowkidar in a village will get 10,000 rupees, whereas a police constable who does little more than that and is trained for little more than that will be getting 60,000, 50,000 rupees. So the big thing in India is there's no question of unemployment, question of government employment. Everybody wants to get into government. My daughter was telling me that she and Rathin worked in the UNDP for a while. She said, great jobs there. UN salary, no tax, and no work. So,
also work, but no obligation. Working is optional.
So that is optional. So if you want to do it, otherwise don't bother. So government of India is like that. You can't be fired, nothing will happen, and it's protected for life. And now you got another pay commission coming. Now, a man like Arun Jaitley actually said that this is good for consumption, it's a boost, it's a pump primer. It's a pump primer. You can keep priming the economy this way. More refrigerators, bigger cars. If you want to look at more new cars, you should go to a cantonment or you should go to a government college. Everybody's got new cars, new refrigerators, new washing machines. Outside that, very little happens. So Rathin has spoken about this. The whole game is trying to break into that 150 million, and that is a gated community. It's very difficult to get in. I did a paper actually called the gated community, in 2014. And I said that, to break into the gated community is going to be extremely difficult. We protect it with, I live in a small gated community for 21 houses. We have 2 chowkidars there. See who's coming inside. There's a book there. The guy writes who's coming in. The Swiggy fellow, the whatever chaps come, they all sign their names, come and go out. So this gated community is very difficult to get in. It's high salary, high, and now we're all talking about cheaper to spend a holiday in Hong Kong or Bangkok or somewhere than in Prayagraj. So I think we're alluding to something really big happening. If you look at this fellow, this boy who won the World Chess Championship, Kukesh, I was looking at the newspapers and I was looking at the social media comments. The South was agog. Said, this is us. How many grandmasters are there in Bihar? How many grandmasters are in UP? These are questions asked. And this is what is going on. So already this feeling has come of them and us. Now, we are also going through a demographic situation where Telangana will be the last state to come to zero reproduction. By 2030, the South will stop growing. Then you will have delimitation of parliaments coming in again, which means that UP and Bihar will get 70 more seats in parliament. And this will be a minority contributing the most taxation, the most to GDP in this country. What kind of feelings it will engender? This conception of India was never there till Jawaharlal Nehru gave us this beautiful idea of all will be one. And therefore they had this conception of one language, Hindi. Hindi was the Congress Party's language. It was not the BJP or the Jansangh which said Hindi will be our national language. And that India is gone. Now we are all separate. We are north, south, east, west, Tamilians, Telugus, Maharashtrians, Gujaratis. Uniformly, everybody says, Gujarat se aa raha hai to kuch scam hai, So, I think we are looking at some serious problems. So, Rathin, glad you touched on this. So, question for all of us is, are we going to let this continue for a while? Or are we going to be out of the system and just keep watching it? Rathin has spoken about education. Look at the quality of education. There is a school in Adilabad which I follow, and I go there every few months and I give some money a little. Their requests are all very small, Their requests are like, give us a sound box so we can sing together with a mic and things like that. But the kids, there are under 12-year-old kids, they all sleep in the same hall, they eat in the same hall, they are taught in the same hall, and they all use almost 100 to 1 toilet. And this is a tribal school. So, if you are not a part of that gated community, then that is where you end up, if you are on the state's largest. So, how long will this continue is a question which I don't know. Maybe we are all waiting to see. Luckily, I don't have much time to wait. But many of you will be around. Things are going to happen in this country. So questions are, how do we, suppose, I remember when I was graduating out of my class at Harvard, we had a farewell dinner. So Professor Galbraith, who was bidding us goodbye to all the people from the developing countries. Said, now that you guys have studied here, I'm sure you have solutions. So we must have taught you that. So I said, Professor, then he looked at me and said, you're an Indian, you look bright enough to answer. So I said, Professor, when I came here, you asked the same question, and then I replied saying that I don't know, if I knew, I wouldn't have come here. So he said, now after 3 years, I know I don't know. Because this problem is so, where the cookie is going to crumble, we don't know. But it is going to crumble because this is too good a thing to last. So questions? Yes.
Thanks for enlightening us. My question is, we are in fifth industrial revolution today. I think we moved from first, second, third, fourth, whatever. Whether you like or not, a lot of things are coming in where the human population will be replaced with machines and so on and so forth, right? When you talk about the economy, consumption, the private investments, government investments, exports, imports, and all dimensions are there. How this fifth industrial revolution is going to impact these 4 or 5 elements, what do you see in the next 5-10 years?
I think that's an excellent question. I was anticipating that this would be something people would say. In technical terms, since you're talking about AI, if you ask AI the wrong question, which is the workflow is jobs, therefore skills, therefore education, you're not going to solve the problem. If you accept that the workflow is I get educated, therefore I am skilled enough to take some bloody exam, and therefore I get a job, then that's the right workflow. AI will only help there by integrating education, skills, and jobs. But if you ask the wrong question, it will not. Similarly, for construction, it continues to be highly labor intensive. What you'll get is a better built environment, right? Cheaper access to ecosystem services, and the major problem with ecosystem services, public transport, etc., which we face in India, which is crowding, that with intelligent thinking, not AI, can be sort of rationalized much more effectively using AI. I would say in 3 of the 5 sectors, I know agriculture I have not thought about. And I think the shirts will continue to have to be made. Shirts have a stubborn tendency not to be made by AI, thank heavens. What it might eliminate is designers. But for 300 rupee shirts, that's not my first problem. So to summarize, I think AI has considerable potential to improve the cost effectiveness of the delivery of the 5 things I mentioned without necessarily impacting employment.
No, but the dilapidated picture you present, the younger generation have many more resources at their end to come up with so many levels of reading, tracking, and generate things. Those are the aspects which we are not touching because we are saturated enough. We think the ship is sinking because our levels of whatever, where we are stagnated at good things and good points.
If the younger generation were, very quickly, I would have agreed with you. If I would have agreed with you, if your children didn't emigrate to America, that is a good use of your talents. If people from Andhra Pradesh stop going to San Diego every year in the numbers they're going, and not so scared of H1 visas being abolished by Trump or whoever, then I would agree with you that they have opportunity. They're leaving because they don't have opportunity, obviously. The third class country. So someone from Bihar is leaving Bihar. A Bihari taxi driver drove me here. Incredible entrepreneur. He's making 3 lakhs a month now. And he said he left Bihar because the poor fellow can't go to America. So he comes here. This is kind of third class America. From third class America, people go to America. Right? Keralites. Most advanced state go to Dubai. Would these people leave if they had opportunities? No. So sure, young people have opportunity. I left. I'm smart. I left. I had opportunity. So you leave. So therefore, empirically you can't be correct that there is opportunity for people to make things here today. Because the same amounts of people want to emigrate, even illegally, even Gujaratis, want to emigrate as they did in my generation. So where is the opportunity?
My question to Rathin, you or Mohan, is that would it help if we moved more items from the central list to the state list or from the concurrent list to the state list so that we devolve power maybe to the panchayats and the states and they can perform. I mean, this whole thing of running out of Delhi, is it coming in the way? I mean, is it? I mean,
Take that?
Yeah.
This, you have to look at our history. The history of this subcontinent has been one of the attempt by the Delhi Sultanate. A very great Gujarati leader invented that phrase in contemporary times. Great Gujarati leader. Of trying to exercise central control over devolved areas. The Delhi Sultanate model has always failed, but it does not fail because of devolution, and then devolution happens. What happens is you recreate a Delhi Sultanate. Let me give you two examples. So when the Marathas by state went to Delhi to overthrow the Delhi Sultanate, they just started controlling it again. Ditto with the British. When the Nizam of Hyderabad came here to break away from the Delhi Sultanate, he recreated the Delhi Sultanate in the province, in the state of Hyderabad. Why am I saying the latter? Because when you talked about urban and panchayat, this is the big fallacy in this country. I've been called, I've flown business class to a couple of conferences on metropolitan public finance. But the simple truth is, there is no such thing as a fiscal entity called a municipality. Municipalities cannot borrow money because they are not fiscal entities. They are completely controlled by the state. So basically cities are places, Hyderabad is before you. What can I say? You bring in rural money, you buy land here, agricultural ideally, you denotify it, you make some more money, you sell the land. That's all you talk about. Go to an average household in Bombay or Hyderabad. Maharashtra is really bad in this respect. Maybe I'm exaggerating. But I found Hyderabad very similar. Maharashtra, I remember I went with my boss who retired as finance secretary, he was from Madhya Pradesh. I asked him, I'm from Bombay, so we were on a state visit. So I said, would you like to come out and take you to show you real Bombay, not all this government? So he said, no, I have to have dinner with my batchmates. So as I was leaving a bit later, he came back looking very glum to the Sayadri, the state guest house. I said, what happened, sir? He said, I got very bored. So what? He said, they were only talking about buying and selling land. I said, what, for 1 hour? That's all they were talking. He said, yeah, they had no other subject of conversation. Zameen kahan kharida, yahan becha, phir yahan kharida. It's, if you are fortunate enough to be like me, you realize what a boring life that must be. But that is what happens in our cities. So therefore, the political economy of urban-rural relationships inhibits the ability to devolve in a way that is actually meaningful to increase prosperity. There are these big constraints. I've given you empirical evidence of some of them. So if I was talking to a much younger audience, I would say the day the Municipal Commissioner of Hyderabad reports the Mayor of Hyderabad, and the day you abolish HMDA, that day let's talk devolution. Until then, it's a fake. Yes, ma'am.
So one quick question. So we are those in the economist field would be very familiar with this, that we have missed the manufacturing bus for a long time. We keep talking about this a lot of time. But going forward, what kind of incentivization should be done to actually help the manufacturing sector, particularly that which is in the unorganized sector, actually sustain itself and sort of go at least in the long run? So what is the basic premise there for that?
I can't answer the last part of your question because I don't believe in the word at least. I'm an ambitious guy. So the first thing I want from the unorganized sector is an honest answer. Why are you still unorganized? I keep asking people, why are you so happy running that crappy little industrial unit? Why don't you think in my lifetime, I want people to think like Dhirubhai. He was also unorganized once. So if the answer is what I suspect, then I'm afraid we are catching the wrong end of the stick. Because I know that, for example, the 300 rupee shirts that Tirupur and Vapi are capable of making, they don't want to make. So it's not a matter of incentives as much as entrepreneurs in India want, and this may sound absurd. I would appeal to entrepreneurs in India not to be like Lasli Wadia and to show some ambition to make money. Please go out and make money. Now don't make money out of rent seeking. 90% of entrepreneurs make money out of rent seeking. The latest racket in that, earlier it used to be land, then it was licenses. Now it is haircuts from the banks, which you pay for. I was on the board of a company called CG Power, which I was asked by SEBI to be on the board, and then we sold it successfully to Murugappa Group, which is in South Indian Engineering Tribe Group. Alright? Vikram Thapar had bled the company dry, it stolen money. It was sold at a haircut to the banks of 10 paise to the rupee, which means for every rupee the banks had lent, they only got back 10% and they signed. So Murugappa Group benefited from 90. That's a lot of money Murugappa Group made. They made a lot of money, but they didn't make it through dhanda. So again, I just want, can capitalists please be capitalists? If you don't have capitalists, then you have to ask yourself, what is this unorganized sector really doing? Ask him what his game is. Is it, see, look at Bombay. Anybody who ran an unorganized sector or ran a textile mill made a lot of money, not through running an industry, but through the rent seeking they did, the land they sold around Powai. We had CZ, we had the Andheri Marol belt. So a lot of people have made money in a lot of ways, but rarely had they made money by buying inputs, employing workers, and selling output at a profit. That is a gloriously sacred business. I would love them to do it. So I would say that we have a large unorganized sector precisely because we don't have entrepreneurs who want to run an organized sector. That's only part of the problem. There are other problems. There is the problem of skills. There is the problem of roads. There is a whole land question, which I don't want to get into. But let me tell you that my biggest, do you know who the biggest landowner in India is? Specifically the Indian Armed Forces and Indian Railways. You want to build a airport, Pune, which is in my state. Huh? Yeah, armed forces, more generally. So, I had this conversation in Pune. I'm just giving you a flavor. I'm not saying, our defense services do a great job. I don't particularly see why when you want to build an airport, take Chennai. Also, today that problem is coming. They're building some Parandur, some 80 kilometers from Chennai, something. A lot of people are going to make a lot of money in land acquisition. I know, good. If that's your game, then I'm not interested. But if you look at Chennai airport, adjacent to it is the Officers Training Academy Chennai and the Indian Coast Guard. You give me that land. I'll build an international airport in Chennai. Why should, and then take Parandur and put the Officers Training Academy there. Why does it have to be in the middle of the St. Thomas Mount? And why should the Coast Guard hang out? It's a very dangerous place for the Coast Guard to be right next to the airport. Put them somewhere in the OMR. Build them a nice thing. Indian Navy, we built them a base in Karwar. All the admirals are still sitting in Colaba. Not 1 inch of land in Colaba has been released for civilian purposes. That's just one example. It's not just the army. It's the railways. So within the government, the deployment and utilization of land, and within the private sector, the deployment and utilization of land has become the main profit-making game in town for rich people. If we change that, you will see the organized sector boom.
About developments in the Indian economy, we compare ourselves with China in terms of scale and other things. The economist point of view, I want to know whether we have got access to reliable empirical data to compare like that. Economists, do we have access to transparent and reliable information? It's available. I just want to know.
Yeah, there's enough information to tell me that I know that because I was looking at something today which I have not validated, which was an Indo-Chinese comparison. But there's enough data to tell me that China is ahead of us in all respects except one, which is quite interesting. So they have 40% more railway network than us, but we have 20% more roads than them. I wonder what that tells me. We know. For example, we know that unambiguously I can tell you something which is very cheerful. If you're happy with that, we are better than Pakistan. But we are not better than China. We are not better than Sri Lanka. We are not better than Thailand. We are not even better than fellow losers. We're pretty bad at it, but we'll get there. We might just beat Thailand or Turkey in my lifetime. But China has passed that loop. Our data unambiguously shows that we are better, much better than China, than Pakistan.
Dr. Roy and Sir, for both of you, my question is, of course, middle income trap is very worrisome, and I've been hearing this from you now for over 1.5 years.
5 years.
5 years that you have been talking about it. But what I wanted to understand is the beauty of our country used to be our federal structures, the center and the state, and the kind of strengths the states also had once upon a time, which now seems to be getting distorted. I wanted to understand from both of you is that the economic growth or the societal growth which we talk about, unless these two don't work in sync, won't happen. What is the solution to that? You have a finance commission which talks and which only talks, and I don't know how valuable the reports are or how much are they considered. When we see a different government at the center, the states which are on the run by opposition, which we are now seeing in Telangana is happening, they squeeze you out, the borrowings and so many other issues which come up. So, given the experiences that both of you have, sir, what could be the way forward when we talk about, our federal structure and the center-state relations?
I think I have a different take on it. I think the real concentration of power is in the states. The chief minister of a state is an all-powerful potentate. He controls the police, he controls allocation of land, he controls allocation of electricity, all these things. And he can actually have a person killed and nothing will happen. The Prime Minister of India, by contrast, has very little power. He's got a pulpit from where he can preach, he can convert people, he can show them new directions. But he can't do a daroga's job. Now, this is the basic structure of government which we're grappling with. There's too much of concentration of power, not only in the states, but in the states, like for instance, why should in a school, in a primary school in a village, teachers don't come, nothing can be done in the village. The community can't do anything to them. It has to be done by the director of education, who sits in Hyderabad, 300 kilometers away. Now, same ditto for hospitals. It's all centralized again down to the state capital. So you go to decentralized government from there. We had an interesting experiment in Telangana where instead of decentralizing government, he made smaller districts. And so each new district is like an old taluk. So the collector came down. So you took government closer to the people to that extent. And that change you can see around Telangana. Because this transformation of Telangana, which I have been seeing last 10 years, has been quite stupendous. Nothing in the country like this. I did a study in Telangana in 1984, where the income indices, everything was below that of Bihar. This was a barren, bony place. Nothing grew here. And from 2014 to 2024, it got completely transformed. Why? Because of one thing. Only one thing was done: water. Water was provided everywhere. Every village today has a water tank. And it's a blue cylinder with pipes running out of it. He did very simple things like that. But so to that extent, he took government down to the villages. But you still keep talking about power of government. The power of government actually stops pretty much Dilliyada or Palanda. That is, beyond that, I once went to a conference where Dr. Manmohan Singh was talking about law and order being the biggest challenge in the country. And he said that, government is going to come with a big sword. He's going to cut it all off. So one Hindi journalist asked me, he said, "Sir, aapka kya raay hai?" I said, "Inki kalai dekhe to churiyan uthane ke qabil nahi hai." So, but talwar utane ke dhamki hai. Because government has literally lost the ability to do anything. Because it's so high cost that nothing can. Now, Modi had a nice thing of better governance, but we have problem with very high cost governance. So as a result, every government department in the whole country, every state is understaffed.
So we should have some kind of a dictatorship here also, do this kind of job, or I have seen in capitalist kind of markets also, you have to give contract jobs. Saying, I want all this done and I want this kind of quality. But then you have to pay a higher price. Or alternately, we should have minimum wage in every area of the country. Every state has got to have a minimum wage. Like, say, Biharis coming, people from Bihar or UP coming and working in Telangana. Okay, then there should be some kind of minimum wage for that category of work that they're doing. Because I've seen people doing, inhuman kind of living in inhuman kind of conditions and getting underpaid, basically exploited by people that are migrated from other places. So we need, the question is, supposing we have a minimum wage kind of thing, would that help?
Yeah, well, I mean, we do have a minimum wage. The minimum wage, in fact, is enforced by NREGA quite well. And the problem is that people seem to think that paying higher minimum wages is a bad thing. It's actually not. Indians are paid shit. And not just by unorganized sector. I was shocked to hear that the median wage of an employee in Samsung in Tamil Nadu is 30,000 rupees a month. If that is the most you can expect from Apple and Samsung, then why are we attracting foreign direct investment? I can make more money than that by working for a liquor contractor. There is enough technical evidence to show that an increase in the share of wages, a modest increase in the share of wages across the board, is a good thing for the economy. But as Dr. Guruswamy was saying, and by the way, there's another story there, but nobody's asked me. I was on the pay commission. That if all you're going to do is increase government wages, then that's not going to do the trick. But there is a very logical reason why government servants are paid so well. A very logical reason. Although I completely agree that work is optional for them. And we need more government servants and we cannot afford them at these wages. But there's a very logical reason why they are paid so well. But until someone asks me, I won't tell you. Okay.
On that note, we'll end this wonderful evening. Very insightful, very engaging from the audience. I think it deserves a very big clap from all of us. And a big clap for all of you for coming on a working day and giving us a lot of encouragement to begin 2025 on a very enthusiastic, very exciting, very hopeful tone. Thank you very much, Dr. Mohan, Guruswamy, Rathin Roy once again, and all the audience. Have a good rest of the day. Yeah, thank you very much. No.